Today on the official Marvel podcast, we're diving into the revelatory episode 7 of Marvel Television's Agatha All Along. We hear from executive producer and head writer Jac Schaeffer and star Sasheer Zamata.
I think also it'd be interesting for people to rewatch the whole series after they've seen episode 7.
We're also talking to the creators behind Marvel's Agatha Tarot deck and Guidebook, writer Andrea Hanna and artist Brittany Horn.
The tarot cards as a whole, as a deck, is a whole story.
And we're celebrating Halloween this week. We've got a classic spooky short story you won't want to miss, plus last-minute Halloween costume tips from Marvel cosplayer and content creator female Peter Parker.
Everybody can cosplay regardless of what level you're at.
I'm Quinn Lamar.
And I'm Ray Lowe.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
So, Agatha All Along, episode 7. Wow, what a storytelling feat.
Right? We need to get into this spill tea ASAP. So hit that spoiler alert warning.
That's right. Did you hear that? Our spoiler bell just went off, so no blaming us from here on out because episode 7 continues our adventure down the Witch's Road. This time, it's Lilia's turn as she faces her trial centering around a deck of tarot cards.
And through this trial, we learn a lot about Lilia and her abilities as a divination witch.
Right, but sadly, Lilia's story comes to an end as she sacrifices herself to protect the coven. And according to Jac Schaeffer, this wasn't an easy decision.
It was a discussion for a very long time whether or not we were going to kill some of the witches. Because it was a question of tone. Like, are we really going to go there? And for a long time, we didn't kill the witches. And it just felt kind of toothless. So then once we decided we are going to kill some of them, we have to make that meaningful. Especially for a character like Lilia, who's so important to the group. I was on a very let's do an episode that's entirely nonlinear. And everybody was like, okay, here we go. And we broke our brains trying to make it work. From the writer's draft to wrapping shooting. It was a brain melter trying to put that together. But it was about Lilia, an acceptance. That's really what it came down to. And to watch Patty complete that journey. And it's unusual, I think, also for a character who is older, her problem is actually fear. She is so clenched and afraid. And her surrender is so graceful and beautiful and meaningful because she saves the group. It just felt like the perfect button to her story.
That non-linear approach to Lilia's story really pays off too. Here's Agatha All Along star Sasheer Zamata.
I think also it'd be interesting for people to rewatch the whole series after they've seen episode 7. That's my favorite episode with Lilia's trial and all the things you realize were happening earlier in the series. That all makes so much more sense once you see that episode.
Hey, Quinn. You know that deck of tarot cards that Lilia uses for her trial?
Yeah.
Well, did you know that soon you can actually get your very own copy of the set for yourself?
Oh, shut up. That's a real thing?
Yeah, you can put it on your coffee table. You can, if you feel up to it, do some readings,
Ooh.
But you are not going to believe how this project came together because it involved being at the right place at the right time. Mostly, though, shooting your shot because I got a chance to talk to the writer of Marvel's Agatha Tarot deck and Guidebook, Andrea Hanna, and the artist Brittany Horn. Let's listen. Hi, Andrea. All right, to start, can you take us to the basics? Explain what tarot really is.
So I like to start by answering this as what tarot isn't. And I will be very careful here, but personally, I don't think it's a tool of the devil. I think that it's just a tool, and many people see it in that way. And actually, back in 1600 France, Europe, it was originally used as playing cards. And then as the Renaissance movement came through and there were a lot of brilliant artists, they started adding more in-depth art to the cards, and then they became so intricate and so detailed that they were a source of information and mostly a reflection tool. And then it got a little like cliche, and then there were fortune tellers, and that's all fun too. But I will say tarot is exactly what you want it to be.
Can you tell us both about how you got involved with this tarot card deck? You know, Brittany as the artist and Andrea as the writer. Brittany, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
So as I was working on Agatha, I worked on the production as assistant to showrunner Jac Schaeffer. And during the production, these tarot cards kept coming up as, you know, it was kind of a pinnacle thing for the show, because not only is it the focal point of the plot in episode 7, but you have Lilia, who's coming in and out of time and just saying random tarot cards throughout the show. And so we needed them to work, but we came into a lot of unique logistical complications, and we didn't want to use green screen to kind of retroactively comp in some cards. And we needed the cards to match shot for shot from the tarot to the episode that Lilia kind of bopped in and out of her timeline. And, you know, during one shoot day, we were kind of having a huddle on set with, you know, Jac and Mary Lavanos, our amazing executive producer. And we were kind of trying to come up with a way to work around this, because it just wasn't seeming like it was going to work. And it really had to. And I somewhat jokingly said, I'll do it. And I met the eyes with Mary, and she lit up a little bit, and she was like, will you? I said, okay, let's step back. I'll do one. I will try my hardest. And if you love it, great, let's go for it. And if you hate it, no hard feelings. Of course, I'll be more than happy to try as hard as I can to find a plan B and strategize around our complications. But I did the first card, and it was the High Priestess, and Jac and Mary liked the cards, and they said, yes, let's go full steam ahead. I've never been in an art situation that was so run and gun, where, you know, I'm in these 360-degree sets. I'm in the middle of these dark, damp tunnels waiting for camera to line up a shot. And once we get that shot off, making sure that it's approved by Jac, and then I just start drawing as fast as I can.
So first of all, I have been a fan of witchier things for a long time. And when I watched WandaVision and Agatha came up as the ultimate anti-heroine at the end, I did a little digging on my own just out of curiosity. And I swear sometimes the universe listens, because I said, wow, that's a really interesting character. I would like to do something with that one day, but pipe dream kind of thing. So I went about my business. And then a year or so later, randomly, Sarah Singer reached out to me.
AKA the special projects editor here at Marvel, Sarah Singer.
And I had known Sarah through the book community for a really long time. And she, a long time ago, had taken one of my classes called Tarot for Writers. And she's like, hey, I haven't stopped thinking about that tarot class. Do you want to do a deck? And I was like, what? Like, it was not on my 2024 bingo card, but not something I could say no to. And then when she told me it was related to Agatha All Along, I just about like dropped on the floor. So I was delighted to take up the project.
So I guess what was it like creating something in tandem with a television show and all of that long historical lore that comes with it?
Oh my gosh. So to be fair, I am not your traditional writer. I love working in groups. I love when all of the pressure is not on me.
Fair.
So actually, it was quite fun, and it felt rejuvenating in a lot of ways. And having all these bright minds, and Brittany is so great at what she does as well, to sit around and brainstorm things together was really exciting for me.
I mean, were you guys deciding on set characters for the cards together? Were there also separate meetings outside of this?
We all had a meeting, a brainstorming meeting, and put our bids in for who we thought which card would belong to who, or what scene should be on a different card. The tarot cards as a whole, as a deck, is a whole story, but also they represent different elements and different moon phases, and it would make sense to make sure that these characters and what they're doing tie into the elements as well as the moon phase, as well as the story as a whole.
It's really interesting. Like most good collaborations, it's kind of like making soup, right? You add in, somebody comes with one ingredient, and you're like, all right, I got the base. And then somebody's like, oh, it needs a little more pepper. And then you're like, oh, now it's a little bit too peppery. I'll add some salt. And you're kind of mixing this thing together until it's the perfect blend. So Brittany came with the list of those cards saying, we already have these because these characters go with these cards. So I was like, great, we'll start there. And then I had a huge log. And as I was watching the show, I was filling in different like scenes and characters and arcs and trying to tell a story, tell the story of Agatha through the major arcana and the minor arcana. But then as I was creating scenes and stuff, I would check with Brittany and be like, well, so this person's supposed to be the Queen of Cups, but can you put her with some petroleum jelly? Because that shows up in the show. And she'd be like, yeah. And so it was, yeah. So we started with traditional imagery, but I was like, but what do you think about her on the maracas? And Brittany's like, yeah. So we would go back and forth and see like what was okay to change. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's so cute though, because those are your own Easter eggs you're putting in, which is, we know, such a huge thing in the nerddom world, right? In the fandom world,
yes.
Easter eggs all the way. So are there any, I guess you can tease or want to really make sure fans catch that they should be on the lookout for once the tarot deck comes out?
Without spoiling a little bit too much, we may see a very familiar potted plant or possibly a neighbor's dog that if you saw them would create a spark in your memory.
So for newbies like me, there's obviously a process of tarot decks, but I imagine the first one is asking anything from the deck, right? So what are the kinds of questions you may ask?
Well, that also comes with different spreads as well. So there is there's a 3-card spread where you can do just a general past, present, and future. There's also more in-depth spreads where you can look to different parts of your life. You want to do like a childhood spread, and then you kind of ask questions, or a lot of times there's techniques where you just blank. Whatever the cards say is what the cards say.
There are some people who pick it up specifically for insight about creative projects or to see something in a different way. There are people that pull cards every day. There are people that pull 1 card, 2 cards, 1,000,000 cards, the whole deck. Any way to use it that you find valuable. And what I say about all tools, including like astrology and any of that stuff, if it isn't serving you, then it's not the tool for you. And it can be really insightful if you open your mind to it.
Okay, yeah, so I'm definitely getting the deck of cards. No, I do not know how to read tarot, but I did enjoy learning a bit about it through your convo. I might start texting you questions once it gets here, though.
And I'm going to direct those questions right to Andrea and Brittany, and then I'll get back to you, Quinn. But oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get my hands on a deck. I mean, can you imagine having a full set in your own home? I will probably frame them, Quinn. But while we have to wait for the Tarot Deck Summer 2025 release, we have a special spooky treat for you featuring an old prose story from the Marvel Archives written in 1941. A story titled Haunted Fireplace by Arthur Cazeneuve from USA Comics #1.
John Hardy was dead. Gregory Stanton knew John Hardy was dead because he had attended the funeral over 10 weeks ago. Not because he was a particular friend of Hardy's, but because as the Chancellor of Hardy's Lodge, he had to be present at the interment. That's why Stanton hated being Chancellor, because he had to attend funerals and other functions which he despised. But he knew, for almost a certainty, that John Hardy was dead, despite the fact that he had seen him just as sure as life a few minutes ago in front of the fireplace. And Hardy spoke to him, just as he used to when they quarreled over the land deals they used to make. He had said ominously, "Greg, I've come back to haunt you. I'll kill you if I don't drive you mad. Return the lands to my sons, or I'll wreak my vengeance on you." Then the eerie apparition disappeared, leaving Stanton stupefied and horror-stricken. He had seen a ghost. He knew Hardy's voice and the body. It was Hardy without a shadow of a doubt. This is a trick, he thought. Somebody's trying to mock me out of my riches by using coercive force. He gathered his senses and lifted himself out of his chair. The room was dark except for the sparse, radiant rays the open fireplace dispersed about the room. He walked slowly to the door, snapped on the lights, and called for his butler. I want you to go over this room with a fine hair comb, he ordered his servant. Look for wirings of any sort and anything else which looks suspicious. That night, Stanton slept very little. He tossed and rolled in his bed, debating with himself as to whether he had actually seen the ghost, or if he had dozed off for a brief minute and dreamt the entire incident. The following morning, the butler reported to Stanton that he had found nothing in or about the room which didn't belong there. He had searched every nook and cranny of the building, but to no avail. Stanton realized there was only one way to confirm his suspicion, that the vision which he thought he had seen was a hoax. He was determined to sit in the same seat that night and see what transpired. Ordinarily, Stanton would have dismissed the episode of the previous night as a mere dream, but Hardy had warned him before he died that he would come out of his grave and haunt him if he didn't turn over the deeds to the land which he claimed was rightfully his. Stanton doused the lights in the living room, made a fire in the stately brick fireplace, and seated himself in the soft chair at hand. For a long half hour, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, he sat upright. His body stiffened, and his pipe dropped from his limp lips into his lap. The outline of a man became discernible in the warm glow of the fireplace. It was as though a transparent screen was hanging in front of the fireplace, and the image of a man was being played upon it. It wasn't an image, though, because this one was three-dimensional. It moved forward and had bulk. Then, the apparition began to talk. Stanton, you have your last chance. It was Hardy. There was not the slightest doubt that it was him. You have your last chance to return the property to my sons, he continued. And if you don't, I'll kill you no matter where you go. Stanton moved his hand slowly towards the cushion of his seat. With a jerk of his wrist, he whisked out a revolver which he had concealed and fired 2 shots at the transparent figure before him. The shots whistled through the figure and struck the brick fireplace, ricocheting back to other parts of the room. Then, before the quaking Stanton could budge from his chair, Hardy's figure faded and vanished. The butler ran into the room, followed a second later by other servants in the house. But Stanton calmed them by explaining that he had been cleaning his gun and it went off accidentally. It was needless for him to try to sleep that night. He paced the soft rug in his study for hours, smoking cigarette after cigarette and thinking of what he might do to solve his predicament. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, his mind was made up. Stanton dressed himself warmly, went to his garage, and started his car. After a short drive, the wealthy real estate magnate wheeled his slick roadster up to police headquarters. Stanton bounded up the stairs and past the sergeant's desk. He knew the very office he sought and headed straight for it. The door was ajar, so he walked right in. The tall, husky man seated behind the desk recognized Stanton and extended his hand. Aren't you up rather late? Or shall I say early? Captain Hennigan, head of the Detective Bureau, questioned as he drew up a chair for Stanton. I haven't slept a wink in 2 nights, the haggard visitor to the lockup answered. Hennigan studied the man's face. It was a weary mass of gnarled, piteous lines. His eyelids drooped. The portion of flesh beneath the sockets of his eyes were exceedingly swollen. Stanton began to relate his bizarre tale. As he progressed, omitting no minor details, the captain slid forward in his seat. You mean, he finally asked after listening to Stanton for fully 10 minutes, that you shot at this figure and the bullets just went through him? The realtor caught his breath. Yes, I mean just that. The pair settled back in their seats. The sleuth was deep in thought. while the man who had related his terrifying experience rested slightly. Hennigan picked up the receiver on the telephone. "We'll prove one thing in a minute, I hope," he said. "I want you to get me the police department in Dale City, New Hampshire," he ordered the man on the switchboard. In a few minutes, the phone rang in Hennigan's office. He picked up the receiver. It was the Dale City Police. "This is Hennigan of the Central Valley, Louisiana Police. I'd appreciate it if you would check and let me know if the Hardy boys are at their college fraternity tonight. Now, I must know if they're there now, and if they were there last night." The pair waited impatiently for the answer. In a few minutes, the phone rang again. It was the Dale City Police reporting. "They are both here," the voice came through the earpiece. "They haven't been outside their fraternity house since 8 o'clock last night. They were in the same hours the night before. I checked the facts closely." The following night, Hennigan stole into the Stanton study and hid behind a curtain. At the appointed time, Stanton appeared and seated himself in his soft chair. Suddenly, a soft snapping sound whisked through the room. A voice began speaking. "You have not complied with my demands," it began. Hennigan strained his eyes, but could see nothing. He only heard a voice. "You have failed to comply with my orders," it went on, "so you shall die tonight." Before the words were fully finished, a shot rent the still air. Stanton literally flew out of his seat. He felt himself, as if searching for a puncture in his body. Then 2 more shots blazed through the placid air. Stanton knew the shooting was outside. He ran through the door and circled the building. As he rounded the corner, he saw Hennigan leading Jameson, the butler, at gun's point. Jameson was wounded in the shoulder. His face was drenched in pain. "Here is your ghost," answered Hennigan. "I knew you were being hoaxed the minute I heard the voice and couldn't see the figure. The figure was only visible to your eyes." Once inside, Hennigan explained the ruse. "Jameson, your would-be loyal butler, wanted to drive you mad with fear. He drew a perfect likeness of Hardy, who he knew disliked you, and placed it into a specially built tube-like apparatus which he shone through a hole in the fireplace. By focusing it into the lenses of your glasses, the image was distinctly visible to you. He imitated Hardy's voice, which was a simple matter since it was so raspy and characteristic." "But why would he want to do this to me?" questioned Stanton. But before he could eke out an answer from his sleuth friend, the reason flashed into his mind. "I know," he drawled. "I made a will turning over my wealth to my faithful servants in the event anything happened to me where I could not carry on as I ordinarily should."
All right, since we're in the midst of our Halloween celebrations, Quinn, I need to know if you have a costume yet, because, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about mine for weeks now.
Okay, so kinda.
Quinn, what do you mean kinda? Halloween is literally tomorrow.
I know. And I reached out to a pro to help me assemble a last minute costume, and it involves a bit of something I learned called closet cosplay.
Ooh, now you're speaking my language, Quinn. Well, then let's take a listen.
We are here joined by cosplay extraordinary and queen, Jess, also known as the female Peter Parker. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm really excited about this too. Cosplay is something that I really love to see. So how about you give us a little bit of a breakdown of like what you do?
Yeah, I am a content creator and cosplayer, mostly in the Marvel space, but I kind of branch out here and there with other cosplays. I started content creation back during the pandemic on TikTok. So I've been cosplaying since then. And a lot of my stuff is like Marvel skits and cosplay tips and all that. So it's so fun.
For those of us who don't know, could you explain what cosplay is?
Yes. So cosplaying is in simple terms, kind of like adult dress up.
Love that.
But right? It's so fun because I feel like it's a way to like embrace the characters you love in a new way besides just like consuming media, because you kind of like become the media in a way. So yeah, it's kind of like you pick your character that you like. And the cosplay space is really cool because you can like buy costumes, you can make costumes, you can do like outfits inspired by. So there's like lots of different ways to do cosplay. But yeah, it reflects like characters and media that you enjoy and that you love.
Right. That's what I love about it too. So what would you say are some like, things that people get wrong about cosplay or some misconceptions about it?
I feel like a lot of people who first see the cosplay space are seeing a lot of cosplayers that have done it for a really long time or have a lot of like experience with making their cosplays. And you don't have to go big or go home. Like there's even smaller ways to do cosplay, and like all cosplay is valid regardless of whether it's closet cosplay or you've made a cosplay or you've bought a cosplay. Like I know when I first started getting into like armor cosplays and like costumes from shows, I bought a lot of my cosplays, and I'm only just now, after like a handful of years, starting to learn how to make my own. But you don't have to make your own cosplay for it to be a valid cosplay. Like everybody can cosplay regardless of what level you're at. And I think that's what makes cosplay so cool and such a fun community.
I was about to start snapping like,
yeah. Like one of the ways that I started doing cosplay, and that actually I suggest to people on how to start cosplaying, is closet cosplay. Quinn, I don't know if you do you know like what Disney bounding is?
I am not familiar with Disney bounding.
Okay, so Disney bounding is this kind of like fun thing that people do when they go to the Disney parks. So you like pick a Disney character, like I'll use Spider-Man as an example. Let's say like I was planning to go to Disney and I knew I was going to like take pictures in Avengers Campus or whatever. I would pick a character. So I would pick Spider-Man, and you can create an outfit to wear that like kind of reflects what the character's wearing, or like takes elements of their costumes or outfits from like the films or the comics, and then you can like wear it, and it's a really cool thing because like people will like recognize it.
So it's like soft launching into cosplay, like wearing something you already have.
Exactly.
And rather than like doing a whole costume. So like that, so that's how you started. How have things evolved since closet cosplay to what we see now, which is like way bigger than that?
It's definitely a lot different.
It's like so multiple funny. Closets now.
Yeah, when I first started cosplaying, like I'm trying to remember, I think my very first one that I did was Tony Stark.
Tony Stark.
And it was like the simplest Tony Stark I could have done. Like I literally put like a black t-shirt on and sunglasses, and I was like, cool.
I mean, but that is like Tony Stark, right?
That is literally Tony.
That's the vibe. That's totally the vibe. So what would you say is your favorite cosplay you've done?
Okay, so I have a couple. I'll give you top 3.
Okay.
My favorite cosplay to wear is probably Spider-Man, just because like no matter how many times I put that on, like every time I put a Spider-Man suit on, you're just like, wow, I feel so cool.
It looks really amazing.
Oh, thank you. Kate Bishop's also one of my favorite characters. So like
yes.
I love Kate Bishop. And like I feel like out of the characters I have cosplays for, she is one that I look most like. So like if I was trying to make it as accurate to the character as possible, like I feel like that one's the most accurate for me, that I feel like I look most like. But I think in terms of like all around, like putting it together and everything, I would probably say my She-Hulk cosplay. Cause that was the first cosplay I did like full face paint and stuff for.
That is commitment. I mean, the outcome is like so cool though. So I think it's definitely worth it. Okay, so because, Halloween is coming up, so people are going to be trying to get their cosplay costumes together. What advice would you give to somebody who's trying to put together a cosplay and it's like the day before Halloween?
Oh, man. Okay. So I think the fallback is always probably, my answer will always be closet cosplaying is going to be your best option. Like, let's say it was me and like it was like 24 hours and I was about to go to a Halloween party and I'm like trying to figure it out. If you have time to go to a store, little props are usually easier to find than other things. So like a good example is like Daredevil. He has very common everyday clothes. He's wearing like a business suit, right? And so like most people would probably already have like clothes similar to that in their house.
That's so true, yeah.
Yeah. So you could like get the business suit, and then all you would need is like the glasses, whether it be like just a standard pair of glasses or like you can run to the store and like pick up like the little red tinted ones.
Genius.
And people, like, especially if you have the red glasses, like people immediately know because they're like, oh, it's Matt.
And you can double duty those red glasses probably as like Cyclops too.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's so weird. I never like when I do think of cosplay, I think of like, you know, full on. I never think about them in their like everyday outfits, which are also very recognizable.
Yes.
Never would have thought about that.
And they're a lot of times like much more accessible for people to make, you know, like, cause like that, again, like that's how I started. Like you can even like buy a lot of times like the clothes that they wear. Like when I did Spider-Man for the first time, like I didn't have access to a Spider-Man suit, but like I just like bought Peter's little like Midtown sweatshirt, and I still wear that as like a cosplay all the time. Like because it's very,
and you're wearing
like,
your own clothes.
Yeah.
That's such a good idea. I mean, now I think I can do Luke Cage. I'm gonna do Luke Cage. You know, why not? So I have to ask you, have you thought about your Halloween costume this year?
Oh man. So I'm kind of leaning towards maybe an Agatha Harkness cosplay because that would be really fun. It is the season of the witch, so it might be a fun one.
I personally think you would eat that up. I will be looking.
All right, I'll get on it. I feel like I have to do it just for you now, Quinn. This is it.
Yes,
there we go.
Do it for me. Do it for those who like don't cosplay as hard. This has been great. But before we let you go, why don't you tell us where people can find you in your cosplay?
Yeah, so I'm on most socials, Female Peter Parker on TikTok and Instagram, and Femme Peter Parker on Snapchat. And I'm also Female Peter Parker on YouTube as well.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us and explaining to us all of this. Check her out if you have not. Thank you again for being with us, Jess.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Halloween isn't the only holiday we're celebrating this week. While some plan on going trick-or-treating tomorrow, others are currently in the process of building their ofrenda for this weekend's Dia de los Muertos festivities. And while most ofrendas include a sugar skull or two, one particular ofrenda in the Marvel Comics universe is focused on a very different kind of skull. One completely engulfed in flames, brought on by the spirit of vengeance. For centuries, many heroes have transformed into the Ghost Rider. Each of them ride in a vehicle spouting hellfire, be it horses, motorcycles, and even a muscle car in the case of Robbie Reyes. During the events of the Avengers Forever storyline, Robbie Reyes sacrificed himself in order to save the multiverse. In the wake of this final heroic act, Robbie left behind his legacy as an Avenger, but also a younger brother named Gabriel Reyes. In 2024's Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes Special Number 1, in a story written by Carlos Hernandez, Captain America and Captain Marvel respond to a call at the Reyes home. The pair quickly barge in, where they're surprised to find Gabriel and his girlfriend standing at the base of a Dia de los Muertos ofrenda. They built it to honor Gabriel's lost brother, and it's covered in pictures of Robbie, newspaper clippings covering Robbie's accomplishments as Ghost Rider, and even his toolbox from the shop where he worked. When questioned by Captain America and Captain Marvel, Gabe explains that this is how he's coping and why he's built an ofrenda for Robbie. An ofrenda is all about hope. Both the living and the dead need reminders that their spirits live on. Robbie, you're still here. My brother. This ofrenda is the proof.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we're covering the season finale of Agatha All Along with stars Kathryn Hahn and Joe Locke.
Being around these amazing people and getting to play this incredible layered and complicated part, I really figured out me for the first time ever.
And while you wait, be sure to review the podcast wherever you're listening and share the podcast with a friend. We really appreciate that.
That is it for today. This episode was hosted by Quinn Lamar and myself, Raylo, with a performance by Clark Carmichael.
Our producer is Jasmine Estrada,
with help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Justin Harris.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening and happy Halloween.